Welcome back, everybody. It's Miss Solomon here, and to help you through book 16, where everything finally shifts, I'm glad that you were able to find this video. So let's read carefully and think about more of the stakes uh, here in the Trojan War in Homer's The Iliad. We've got things like friendship, honor, divine intervention, and the consequences of many people's choices, all kind of convalescing into one. And what is not printed in our textbook for book 16, Patroclus, Achilles' bestie, appeals to Achilles about how moved he is by the Greeks' suffering at this stage in the war. And Patroclus begs Achilles to let Patroclus put on Achilles' armor and fight as though he were Achilles himself. So Patroclus's compassion drives him, and his solution is dangerous because wearing another man's armor blurs identity altogether on the battlefield, and it just creates a whole different dynamic. We already see some foreshadowing in this that the disguise of Patroclus going into war with Achilles' armor, it could have some consequences. And so this moment highlights a key tension that's at play here between personal honor and collective survival. Achilles refuses to fight for Agamemnon's sake, and we've already seen that, but he allows Patroclus to go. The choice shows both Achilles' stubborn pride and his love for Patroclus. Achilles sees this great heroism in Patroclus to want to fight for the cause and avenge those that are falling and suffering, and that he's just, got to do something about it. But keep in mind, the gods are watching all of this always, and the disguise and mistaken identity are going to play a huge role in what happens next. So Achilles tells Patroclus very specifically to drive the Trojans away from the Greek ships, but don't pursue them to the walls of Troy. This instruction is crucial because it sets one for the most important lessons of epic poetry, and especially in the Iliad. We've got this tension between boundaries and restraint. How do we define both of those separately? What is their relationship, boundaries, and restraint? And so Achilles knows the danger of going too far, at least intellectually, when it's not him. But Patroclus, in the heat of battle, is not going to obey his friend. And so Achilles' warning comes from experience and wisdom. Patroclus, like so many of the characters in this epic, are going to fall victim to hubris. We've seen it in Agamemnon already. And hubris is like this overreaching ambition. We saw it with the Epic of Gilgamesh last week. And it's this belief that you can press further than the greater forces intend. And the greater forces at play here are the gods themselves. So when Patroclus charges into battle, the Trojans mistake him for Achilles, which is the whole point. And this is a brilliant example about how identity and reputation are going to work in the Iliad. Armor certainly protects, but it is also a symbol of glory, and it's almost like a second skin. You can walk in and people are going to know exactly who you are by the armor you put on. And the mere sight of Achilles, or at least who they think is Achilles, sends just absolute terror through the entire Trojan army. The Greeks rally behind it, the Trojans falter, and the disguise gives Patroclus immense power on the battlefield, but it sets him up for tragedy. So here we should be asking ourselves, as the Greeks likely would have, Is Patroclus achieving his own glory here, or is he simply borrowing Achilles' glory? We've got this borrowed greatness versus true identity thing also going on amidst all of the other dichotomies and tensions, and it's building this tragedy that's about to unfold. So, as Patroclus fights furiously, he kills just scores of Trojans. The gods are going to step in. So, on page, let's see, 230 of your book, you'll see Zeus. And Zeus debates saving his son, Sarpedon. But fate demands that Sarpedon dies. And Patroclus is going to be the one to kill Sarpedon, and Zeus allows it, though he, meaning Zeus will send Apollo to retrieve the body. Later, Apollo strikes Patroclus from behind, and Patroclus is weakened by this, and it strips away any of Patroclus's defenses. And so this sequence shows us the constant negotiations among fate, divine will, and human choice. Zeus will mourn his son, Sarpedon, but even he cannot overturn destiny. Zeus cannot even overturn whatever destiny is. And Apollo's blow reminds us that no mortal, no matter how valiant, can transcend the gods' control either. Patroclus is caught in a web of human courage and divine inevitability, and he just walks right into it. And then here we are, where Hector and Patroclus line up. If you'll turn in your books to page 241, Hector delivers the final strike to Patroclus. And we're gonna read through this on page 241, starting at line 921. And this is Hector speaking. Patroclus, I suppose you thought you would destroy my city and enslave the women of Troy and rob them of their day of freedom and take them in your ships to your own homeland. Fool. Hector's horses galloped to protect them. Their hoofs were eager for the battlefield. I am the finest of the valiant fighters of Troy, and I defend the Trojan women from slavery the day they lose their freedom. But as for you, vultures will eat you up. You are a weakling, and your great Achilles did you no good at all. He stayed behind. I bet he told you when you left for battle, Patroclus, do not drive your chariot back here to the hollow ships until you slice right through the bloody tunic to the chest of murderous Hector. So he spoke, I think, and you, poor fool, attempted to obey him. Though little strength remained to you, Patroclus, you answered, Hector, you make big boasts now. Zeus, son of Cronus, and Apollo gave you victory. The gods subdued me easily. They took the arms and armor from my body. If 20 men like you had challenged me, all of them would have died beneath my spear. But cruel destiny and Leto's son, Apollo, killed me and my human killer. You were third to slaughter me, but I will tell you this, take it to heart. So there were a lot of people that had to gang up on Patroclus to even get him down to this, Hector being the last one. You surely have not long to live. Your death and overwhelming fate stand near you now. The hands of great Achilles will defeat you. And that was Patroclus speaking. And there's going to be this trend and we see it first, I think, really here, that the person who is slain is going to prophesy the death of their killer. And Patroclus has prophesied Hector's death by the hands of Achilles. If you turn to page 242, it says, his death wrapped around him as he spoke, meaning Patroclus. His spirit flew from his limbs to Hades, and she mourned his fate and left his manhood and his youth. Great Hector spoke to him as um, though he was dead. Patroclus, why do you foretell for me a bitter end? Who knows if great Achilles, the son of Thetis with the braided hair, may fall beneath my spear and lose his life? So he's getting a little bit brazen, Hector is, and feeling it. All of the ambiance of war. And so, with this, he set his foot onto the corpse and tugged his spear of bronze out of the wound and shoved him down onto his back. At once, he hurtled to Automedon, the godlike charioteer of swift Achilles, the grandson of great Aeacus, and Hector leveled his spear and hoped to hit that driver. But he was carried off by the swift, immortal horses who were given as splendid gifts to Peleus by the gods. So Hector tried to add salt in the wound, but it just didn't work. This is a great dramatic, cinematic thing that happens, and Patroclus is going to fall because he wore Achilles' armor, make no mistake. Yet it's going to be Patroclus's death that is the very thing that will bring Achilles back into the war. And so it becomes a catalyst for everything else that follows. This is the real turning point. It's maybe the turning point that we wanted to see back in book 9, but it had to be a little bit more personal for Achilles because he's fighting against all of the great, big, honorable abstractions. And it had to be somebody that he loved to make it palpable and tangible enough to bring him back to earth to want, at least in his mind, to want to go back to war. And Hector doing this is one thing, but then Homer, the poet, shows us how personal bonds drive the sweep of epic history, those close friendships, the loss of just very tight knit relationships are going to shape the destiny of nations. And so, book 16 is all about friendship, disguise, overreaching ambition, or that hubris, the divine limits, and the turning of fate. Patroclus is both heroic and flawed. His compassion is the thing that draws him back into battle, but his inability to restrain himself, like Achilles instructed him to, seals his doom. And now the stage is finally set 16 books later. Achilles will return, not for Agamemnon, though, not for glory either, but to avenge his beloved friend. And so, thank you for being with me for book 16. Follow me to the next one if you're of a mind, and we'll talk a little bit more about the big duel in book 20. Or no, we haven't got there yet. We have to set the stage for the duel. And we got to talk about Patroclus's death on Achilles, and then all of the things that they do to actually prepare for the war. We wouldn't be that lucky for Homer just to be like, all right, now we get Achilles and Hector standoff. There's got to be a little bit more preface to it. So we'll see you later.